I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. $7,000. $7,000 that Brandon had promised to pay back, that he'd sworn on his mother's life he'd return by Christmas. It was March now. I felt the panic rising in my chest, that suffocating feeling when you realize the person you trusted most in the world just wasn't coming back. "You're being unreasonable," he'd said that morning, his voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. "It was a loan between family. You're destroying this marriage over money." But it wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about the lie. It was about him looking me straight in the eye and telling me he'd handle it, that we were a team, that he'd never let me down. And then doing exactly that. I sat on the edge of our bed, our California king with the stupid expensive Egyptian cotton sheets I'd insisted on last year, and tried to breathe. The afternoon sun came through the plantation shutters in these perfect horizontal stripes, and everything looked so normal. So fine. So like a life that wasn't falling apart at the seams. Let me back up. Because this wasn't supposed to be how our story went. 3 years earlier, I was the girl who had it all figured out. Ashley Morrison. Well, Ashley Chen before I married Brandon, but I'd kept Morrison because it sounded better for my real estate license. I was a top-performing agent at Riverside Realty, had just closed on a $1.2 million property in the Westwood subdivision, and my commission check was sitting in my checking account like a beautiful little victory flag. I was 32, my skin was still tight, my blonde highlights were expensive and perfect, and I had a husband who looked at me like I hung the moon. Brandon is the kind of handsome that makes strangers do double takes. Tall, dark hair with just a touch of gray at the temples. The kind of smile that made new clients immediately trust him. He worked in tech, some kind of senior position at a mid-sized software company downtown. He made good money. Not as much as me, but good. We bought the house together in Oakmont, that gorgeous 4-bedroom colonial with a wraparound porch, the one everyone on the street envied. Painted it sage green, installed a new kitchen with quartz countertops, planted rose bushes along the front walkway. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but whose is? We'd been together for 8 years at that point, married for 5. We'd settled into that comfortable groove where you know exactly how someone takes their coffee, where they'll leave their socks on the bathroom floor, what they'll say when they're stressed. We had date nights, usually Fridays at that Italian place in downtown, the one that makes their own pasta. We had friends. We had a life that looked like the Instagram version of happiness. My mom, Linda, loved Brandon. She'd never admitted it, but I could tell. She was the type to call and ask, "How's Brandon doing?" when she really meant, "How are you?" My best friend Jennifer threw me this elaborate dinner party for my birthday that year, and Brandon had made a speech about how lucky he was. I remember feeling so safe in that moment, sitting in my dining room with people I loved, watching my husband look at me with something that felt like genuine adoration. We talked about kids sometimes. Not seriously, not yet. But the conversations were there. Maybe next year, I'd say, when work settles down. And Brandon would nod and squeeze my hand and tell me he'd wait for me forever. His family was fine. His mom, Karen, was one of those intense mothers-in-law who had opinions about everything. She didn't love that I made more money than Brandon. She made that clear in small, poisonous ways. It must be so hard for him, she'd say, not looking up from her salad. Some men have fragile egos. His dad had passed when Brandon was in college, so Karen had basically raised him as the center of her universe. His younger sister, Rebecca, was okay. She lived in Colorado, so we didn't see her much. But the money stuff, that started about 6 months before he left. It was subtle at first. Brandon mentioned that his buddy Marcus needed a loan. They'd been friends since college, and Marcus had hit a rough patch. His divorce was expensive, and he needed cash to float his apartment deposit while his settlement came through. Brandon asked if I'd be okay with him loaning Marcus $3,500. I said no. I remember being clear about it. I said, "Honey, we don't loan money to friends. That's how friendships die, and we have our own financial goals. He nodded. He agreed. He said, "You're right. You're totally right. I'll tell him." But 3 weeks later, I saw a check for $3,500 in the register. When I asked him about it, he got defensive. "I couldn't just leave my friend hanging," he said. We were in the kitchen. He was making his signature thing, some kind of stir-fry, with too much soy sauce. He was desperate, Ash. I had to help. "We talked about this," I said quietly. "You said you'd talk to him." And I did. And then I realized I was being a shitty friend, so I helped him. I didn't push it. That was my mistake, probably. I let it go because he seemed so certain, so righteous about it. I told myself it was his money, his choice. We had enough. We could absorb $3,500. But then his mom needed money for her car. Then Rebecca had some kind of medical thing that wasn't covered by insurance. Then Marcus needed another loan because the first one wasn't enough. Each time, Brandon came to me with this hopeful expression, like he was asking for permission to be a good person. And each time, I said yes, because saying no felt like I was being cold, selfish, unfeeling. By the time he asked me for the $7,000, I'd already given him nearly $12,000 in total. When I finally added it up in a spreadsheet one night while he was at work, I felt physically ill. I printed it out, highlighted it in yellow, and waited for him to come home. He was late that night. He came home at 9:47 p.m., said he'd stopped for gas. He smelled like cologne that wasn't his usual brand, but I ignored that. I showed him the spreadsheet instead. "7,000 of this is still outstanding," I said, my voice steady. "Marcus said he'd pay Brandon back in February. It's March. Brandon, this is almost as much as a car payment. We need to talk about boundaries here." He looked at the spreadsheet like I'd just handed him a bomb. "You're tracking my money?" he said slowly. "Our money," I corrected. "Brandon, it's our money. And yes, I'm tracking it because we're married. This affects both of us." "I can't believe you'd do this," he said. He set the spreadsheet down on the kitchen counter like it was contaminated. "This is insane. This is controlling. Do you not trust me?" "I trust you. I don't trust that you've thought this through." He stared at me for a long moment. His jaw clenched. Then he said, "I'm going to bed." I stood there in my kitchen, the spreadsheet in my hands, and felt something crack open inside my chest. That was the morning of the fight. That was the Tuesday when he told me I was destroying the marriage over money, and I realized, really realized, that he wasn't coming back. I just didn't know how right I was. I was still sitting on the bed, still staring at nothing, when I heard the sound. A car engine. Not Brandon's Audi, which has that distinctive German purr. This was something else, something loud and expensive. The kind of engine you hear before you see the vehicle. I went to the window. And that's when I saw it. A Range Rover Evoque, brand new, hunter green with custom chrome trim, pulling slowly into the driveway of the house across the street. The Henderson's place. The one that had been on the market for months. But it wasn't the car itself that made me freeze. It was the person who stepped out of the driver's seat. Blonde hair, fit, wearing a white linen dress and sunglasses despite the fact that it was overcast, and walking around to the passenger side to help out someone else. I squinted, trying to see better, and my blood went absolutely cold. It was Marcus. Marcus stood there in the driveway across the street, looking like he'd won the lottery. He was wearing a navy polo shirt, designer sunglasses, and he had his arm around the blonde woman's waist like she was a trophy he'd just collected. The woman was laughing at something he'd said, her head tilted back, completely at ease. They looked like a couple, a real couple, the kind you see on vacation photos, golden and effortless. I couldn't breathe. My hands gripped the windowsill so hard my knuckles turned white. The Range Rover, the new Range Rover that probably cost more than my annual commission. The woman in the white linen dress, the casual intimacy between them, and worst of all, the absolute glow of happiness radiating off Marcus like he'd never had a financial problem in his entire life. I watched them disappear into the Hendersons' house. The front door closed. And I stood there, still frozen at the window, trying to make the pieces fit together in a way that made sense. $7,000. That's what Brandon said Marcus needed. $7,000 for his divorce settlement, to float his apartment, to get back on his feet. I'd felt guilty for wanting to say no. I'd felt selfish. Brandon had looked at me with such disappointment when I'd first refused, like I was choosing cruelty over compassion. So I'd given in. We'd given in. And now Marcus was buying a house in Oakmont, driving a luxury SUV, moving into the neighborhood with a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a J.Crew catalog. I stumbled backward and sat on the edge of the bed. My chest was tight, that panic feeling again. But this time it was different. This time it was anger. Hot, white-hot anger that made my ears ring. My phone buzzed. Brandon, a text message. "I'm staying at Marcus's tonight. We're catching up. Don't wait up." I stared at that text for a full minute. Then I did something I'd never done before. I called Jennifer. She picked up on the third ring. "Hey babe, what's up? Can you come over?" My voice sounded strange, hollow. "Right now? It's almost 7. I was about to make dinner." "Please." I couldn't add anything else without my voice breaking. There was a pause. Jennifer knew me well enough to hear the difference between a casual request and a crisis. "I'm leaving my house right now," she said. 20 minutes. She was there in 18. Jennifer has been my best friend since college. She's the kind of person who knows all your secrets and loves you anyway. Actually, loves you more because of them. She's also a divorce attorney, which I was starting to realize might be relevant information. She came through my front door still wearing her work clothes, black blazer and everything, and immediately pulled me into a hug. "Okay, tell me everything," she said, guiding me to the kitchen. She didn't bother asking if Brandon was home. She already knew. I told her about the loans. I told her about the spreadsheet. I told her about the fight that morning. And then I told her about the Range Rover and Marcus and the blonde woman and the house across the street. Jennifer listened without interrupting. She had that expression lawyers get. Focused, analytical, her eyes tracking the pieces of the puzzle. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Ashley," she said carefully, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Has Brandon been acting strange lately? Besides the money stuff." "What do you mean?" "Coming home late, phone on silent, showering immediately when he gets home, picking fights over nothing, new cologne. Anything like that?" I thought about it. The cologne I'd smelled the night before. The way he'd been working late more often. The way he'd started keeping his phone face down on the nightstand. The way he didn't want to have sex anymore, but he'd blame it on stress at work. "Oh my God," I said quietly. "Yeah," Jennifer said. She reached across the counter and took my hand. "I think you might have a bigger problem than a $7,000 loan." My phone buzzed again. Another text from Brandon. "Actually, I might stay at a hotel tonight. Need some space to think." I showed it to Jennifer. She read it and her jaw tightened. "That's not about thinking," she said. "That's about buying time. Ashley, I'm going to say something, and I need you to really hear it. Has it occurred to you that Brandon might not be coming back? Not just tonight. At all?" I'd known it. Somewhere deep down, I'd known it since this morning. But hearing it said out loud by someone else made it real in a way that was physically painful. It felt like something inside my chest had just snapped. "What do I do?" I asked. Jennifer squeezed my hand. "First, you call your bank tomorrow morning. You need to understand exactly what money is in your joint accounts and what's in your individual account. Second, you do not let him know that you know anything. Third, you come to my office on Thursday and we talk about your options." "You think he's going to leave me?" "I think he's already made his decision," Jennifer said gently. "But we're going to make sure that when he does, you're not the one who gets destroyed in the process." I nodded. I felt numb. Completely and utterly numb. Jennifer stayed until almost midnight. We didn't talk much after that. We just sat on my couch, her arm around my shoulders, watching some mindless reality show. At one point, she asked me if I wanted her to stay the night. No, I said. I need to be alone. But that was a lie. I didn't want to be alone. I just didn't know how to ask for help without falling apart completely. After Jennifer left, I went upstairs to the bedroom. I opened Brandon's closet and looked at his clothes. I picked up the cologne bottle from his dresser, some expensive brand I didn't recognize, and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall, leaving a dark stain on the pale gray paint. I sat on the bed, that stupid California king with its stupid expensive Egyptian cotton sheets, and I cried. Not the pretty, delicate cry you see in movies. The ugly kind. The kind where your whole body shakes and you can't catch your breath, and tears are running down your face so fast you can barely see. I cried for the marriage I thought I had. I cried for the trust I'd given so freely. I cried for the woman I'd been that morning, who still believed her husband was coming home. And I cried for the person I was about to become, because I could feel her emerging, someone harder, someone who wasn't going to let this destroy her. Around 2 a.m., I got up and went downstairs to Brandon's office. I opened his desk drawer and pulled out his laptop. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The password was our anniversary date. He'd never changed it. I went straight to his email. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly, but I needed to know. I needed to understand the full scope of what had been happening while I was out there, closing real estate deals and planning date nights and believing in the life we were building together. It took me 3 minutes to find it. An email chain with Marcus, going back 8 months. Talking about covering the tracks. Talking about the setup being perfect, because I was so focused on work. Talking about how Brandon had finally found someone who appreciated him, and that the money thing was just insurance, just a way to weaken my position in case things got messy. And then, buried deeper, receipts for the Range Rover. Purchased 4 days ago. Title transferred to Marcus's name. And below that, a mortgage pre-approval letter for the Hendersons' house, dated last week. My husband had been planning this for months. He'd systematically isolated me, drained my goodwill, made me feel guilty for questioning his loyalty. He'd positioned himself to look like the victim when he left, and he'd done it all while I was sleeping beside him, believing he loved me. The email I was looking for came in real time, right there on the screen. Marcus to Brandon, sent just an hour ago. She's already asking questions. We need to move the timeline up. When are you telling Ashley? And Brandon's response, sent at 1:47 a.m. Tomorrow. I'm going to tell her tomorrow that I'm leaving, and I'm keeping the house, the cars, and half of everything she's made. My lawyer says we have a strong case because of her high income and my emotional labor in the marriage. She won't see it coming. I closed the laptop slowly. Very slowly. Like if I moved too fast, everything would shatter. Then I picked up my phone and dialed Jennifer. It's 2 a.m., she answered, but she was already awake. She knew. I found emails, I said quietly. He's been planning this for months. Jennifer, he's planning to take the house. He's planning to take half of everything I've earned. And he's doing it with Marcus and that woman, and they're all living together in the Hendersons' house right now. Send me everything, Jennifer said. Her voice had changed. It was sharp now. Professional. The voice of a woman who was about to go to war. Screenshots, emails, anything you have. Send it to my secure email, not your regular one. And Ashley, don't let him see your face until we've talked. Can you do that? Yes, I said. Okay. We're going to fix this. I promise you, we're going to fix this. I hung up and I sat in the dark kitchen of the house I'd helped pick out, in the life I'd carefully built, and I realized something. Brandon had made a very serious mistake. He'd assumed I would stay quiet. He'd assumed I would be too embarrassed to fight. He'd assumed that the woman he'd married 5 years ago was still that woman, soft, trusting, eager to please. He didn't know that woman anymore, and he was about to find out exactly who she'd become. The next morning, I didn't answer Brandon's calls. He tried 3 times before 9 a.m., each call going straight to voicemail. By the time Jennifer arrived at my house with her paralegal, Marcus, and a USB drive full of documents, I was already calm, dangerous calm. The kind of calm that comes after you've cried everything out and made a decision you're not going to back away from. Okay, Jennifer said, spreading papers across my kitchen table like a general laying out battle plans. Here's what we have. The emails prove premeditation. The mortgage documents show they were planning this before you even knew there was a problem. The Range Rover purchase is dated 4 days ago, which means they were already celebrating while you were still in the dark. What about the house? I asked. He said he's keeping it. That's where he's wrong, Jennifer said, and there was something almost predatory in her smile. You bought this house during your marriage. Your down payment came from your commission. You're on the deed. And more importantly, you have proof that he's been systematically draining marital assets to finance his girlfriend's lifestyle. That's not just grounds for a 60-40 split in your favor. That's grounds for sanctions. My phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. We need to talk. I'm coming home at 5. I showed Jennifer. She nodded once sharply. Don't respond. Let him show up. Let him see that you know. Is that smart? I asked. It's better than smart, she said. It's psychological. He's expecting you to be crying, or angry, or confused. What he's not expecting is for you to be waiting with your attorney present. At 4:55 p.m., I was sitting in my living room with Jennifer beside me. Her laptop open, her phone recording the conversation. All above board, all legal. The house was quiet except for the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. I'd changed into real clothes, done my makeup, blown out my hair. I looked like a woman who was thriving. I looked like a woman who'd already won. The front door opened. Brandon still had his key. He stopped in the doorway when he saw Jennifer. His face went pale, then red, then pale again. What is this? He asked, his voice flat. Sit down, Brandon, Jennifer said, not looking up from her laptop. We need to talk about the emails. He didn't sit. I don't know what you're talking about. The emails between you and Marcus, Jennifer continued, finally looking at him, dated back 8 months, discussing the setup, the insurance, the weaken her position strategy. Those emails, the ones where you talked about keeping the house and half of Ashley's earnings, those are the ones I'm talking about. I watched the color drain from his face again. He looked at me, and for just a second, I saw panic. Real panic. The expression of someone who'd thought he was so clever, so careful, and had just realized he wasn't. Those emails were private, he said quietly. They were sent through a joint email account that Ashley has access to, Jennifer said, which means they're discoverable, admissible, and they paint a very clear picture of fraud and conspiracy, not to mention the way you've been transferring marital assets to your girlfriend through Marcus. I haven't transferred anything. The Range Rover, Brandon, I said. My voice was steady, icier than I'd ever heard it. You bought a $60,000 vehicle with marital funds and put it in Marcus's name. That's not a gray area. That's embezzlement. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, I love her. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Jennifer's hand found mine under the table. I don't care, I said simply. What I care about is that you committed fraud. What I care about is that you systematically lied to me, stole from me, and planned to take advantage of me in a divorce settlement. What I care about is that you looked me in the eye every single day and told me I was being unreasonable for asking you to repay a $7,000 loan. Ashley, you're going to sign over your claim to this house, Jennifer interrupted. You're going to reimburse all the marital assets you transferred. You're going to pay back every penny of the loans you made without my client's consent. And you're going to do it quietly, without lawyers, without court. Because if you don't, I'm going to file a motion for fraud, and you're going to spend the next 2 years of your life in depositions. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed. Actually laughed. You want to talk about fair? Fair is me believing that my husband loved me. Fair is me thinking we were a team. Fair is me not tracking his spending like he was a child because I trusted him. Fair got thrown out the window when you decided to commit fraud. Jennifer slid a document across the table. This is a separation agreement. You sign it, we file it uncontested, and we're done in 60 days. You don't sign it, we go to court, and I promise you, Brandon, I will make sure every single person in this town knows exactly what you did. The emails will be part of the public record. Your mother will know, your sister will know, your boss will know. He stared at the document. His hands were shaking. If you sign tonight, you walk away with your car and whatever personal belongings are yours, Jennifer continued. If you don't, you leave here with nothing. Not the house, not the vehicles, not the furniture, nothing. And you'll be paying Ashley back every penny of those loans, plus attorney fees. And you'll stay away from me, I added. You'll have no contact, no texts, no calls, no showing up at my office. You'll move out of Oakmont. You'll disappear from my life completely. He looked at me. There was something desperate in his expression now, something that might have been regret. But I didn't care. I was too busy watching the moment he realized he'd lost. Where do I sign? He asked finally. Jennifer handed him a pen. Right here, and initial this page. He signed without reading it. Out. I watched his hands shake as he did. Part of me felt something like satisfaction. Another part of me felt nothing at all. When he was done, Jennifer photographed every page. You have 24 hours to move out. My client has instructed me to change the locks after that time. Do not attempt to retrieve anything without her written permission. Do not attempt contact. Do you understand? He nodded. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, like the act of signing his name had taken something essential out of him. Get out, I said. He stood, he walked to the door. Then he turned back. I really did love you, Ashley. I wasn't in love with you anymore. I don't care, I said again. And I meant it. After he left, Jennifer and I sat in silence for a moment. Then she reached over and squeezed my hand. You did good, she said. You did really good. I nodded. I felt like I was floating, like I wasn't quite connected to my body. The adrenaline was wearing off, and something else was taking its place. Not happiness exactly, not yet. But something close to it. Something like survival. 3 months later, I was sitting in my realtor's office, looking at a new property. A smaller house, just for me. 3 bedrooms instead of 4. No wraparound porch, no rose bushes, no memories of a marriage that had been a lie. Just a clean slate. Brandon had paid back every penny. The loans, the Range Rover, the legal fees. It had taken some pressure. Jennifer had filed the fraud motion anyway, just to make sure he understood she was serious. But he'd done it. He'd also signed a restraining order. He wasn't allowed within 500 feet of me or my office. He'd moved to another state. I hadn't heard from him in months, and I didn't want to. Marcus and his blonde girlfriend had bought the Hendersons' house. I saw them around town sometimes. I'd smile and wave, and they'd look uncomfortable and hurry away. The woman had never looked as happy as she did in that first photo. Turns out getting a house through fraud and infidelity doesn't come with the same satisfaction as earning it yourself. My mom called me almost every day those first few weeks. She never said, I told you so, but I could feel it underneath every conversation. My best friend Jennifer had become my actual best friend in a way she wasn't before. We had dinner together every Thursday. She introduced me to her colleague, a divorce attorney named David, who was going through his own separation. We went out for coffee once, then twice. He's not Brandon. He's careful about boundaries. He asks permission before making decisions. He puts his phone down when he's with me. I'm not ready for anything serious yet. But I'm ready to believe that good men exist, that trust can be earned again, that I can build a life that's actually mine, not a life that looks good in photos. The new house closes next month. I'm painting the kitchen sage green, the same color as my old house, but this time it's my choice, not something I did because Brandon liked it. I'm buying new furniture, new sheets that I'm picking out myself, without anyone else's opinion mattering. And you know what the best part is? I'm not scared anymore. Turns out betrayal doesn't break you. It just shows you what you're made of. And I'm made of stronger stuff than I thought. Brandon taught me that. I just wish I didn't have to marry him to learn it.